Hey everybody, this is my 55-gallon Gourami tank, and today we are going to get in there and do a fairly significant amount of work. The video is going to be a before and after video. We might get a little bit of the in-between. Maybe I'll set the camera up while I'm in there working, and we will probably be having a look at the filter as well. I've got a canister filter on this. It needs to be changed, and in addition to being changed, it needs to be cleaned from the inside out. The filter itself, I think, is starting to get clogged up, and while I've never done it before, today I think I'm going to try to pull the guts apart and get to where the impeller is and see what that all looks like. So I will definitely get that on video when we get in there and do that, so we can all have a look at what the inside of a Sun canister filter looks like and find out how easy or difficult that is. We're also going to do some basic tank maintenance, wipe down the glass, water change, etc., etc. But my concern is the tank smells funny. When I fed it last night, as soon as I opened the lid, I knew something was off. I don't know what it is. I can't figure out what the smell is. It doesn't exactly smell like something's dead in there, but at the same time, it smells kind of swampy and funky, like something's not right in there, and I don't know what it is. I don't know how to explain it. The only thing I can think is possibly I'm losing flow. I'm losing circulation. I've got this power head in the back. I know you can't really even see it, and that's kind of part of the point. That gets clogged up, roots grow into it. It's, you know, you can see what it's trying to move water behind. That actually is a little more open behind there. I probably should have turned this light off first. Let me do this. There's actually more room behind there than you think. There's that. Well, it didn't make it a lot better, did it? Anyway, that water's flowing more freely than you think, but not as freely as it should be. And as I was saying, the lack of flow through my canister filter is another one. I've got the spray bar pointing sort of forward and upwards. You should see not bubbles, but you should definitely see rippling, you know, water that looks like mild rapids right there, and yet you barely see any ripples. So we've definitely got a seriously reduced water flow going on in the tank, and I've got that green cyanobacteria stuff that grows all over that floating water sprite right there. And sometimes cyanobacteria stinks, sometimes it doesn't. I usually find that the red stuff stinks, kind of smells like a wet dog in an old basement wrapped up in wet newspapers. It smells really bad, believe me. This green stuff that I have in most of my tanks generally doesn't smell like anything. Even when I pull it out and I have it in my hands, I've sniffed it before, and just to get an idea of if it has some kind of smell, and it generally doesn't. And it certainly doesn't smell swampy like that smells. So I don't know what's going on in here. I've looked around as best I can. I don't see any dead fish. That's not to say maybe one of those skirt tetras. I'm honestly not even sure how many were in here to begin with. I think it was 5 or 6, but maybe one of those is missing and is buried down there in the Java. It's hard to say. But my big loach is still in there. I've got a big red tail loach. That would be a big significant fish that would stink if it died. And my big catfish is still in there, which is another big sort of significant fish that would stink if it died. A lot of times little tiny fish, if they die, you don't even notice. They don't stink up your tank. So again, I don't have any easy explanation for why the tank smells funny other than severely reduced circulation. You got all that vegetation in there, which inhibits circulation to begin with. Even when you've got fully functioning filters and free-flowing power heads, I would still have greatly reduced circulation just because of all the vegetation in this tank. Now, this tank actually used to have enough circulation that you could see the vegetation moving around in the currents, and now you can look right in the back where the spray bar, part of the spray bar sprays right down the back glass, and look at that movement you see on that. And that is a really, really soft piece of vegetation right there, and it's barely moving. Well, you can see the detritus swirling around in the tank. It's just this slow drift. So that is not enough circulation for me. Today we're going to get in there and really get this tank moving around again and see what happens. So sit tight, let me get set up, and then we'll see where we go from here. Like I said, we'll probably just set the camera up. And there's your after. So we'll get into the amount of work I did once we were in there in a moment. But first, I want to say I did try to video the process of doing the work while I was in there, but I got a phone call and the whole water change got all stretched out, and I wound up doing half of it while I was on the phone, and so the video never got made, and we did not get to see me in there doing any of the work. But there really wasn't a whole lot to see other than me wiping down the glass, and I fished through the big pile of Java Windelov here in the middle. I pulled out a bunch of babies, I pulled out some dead fronds, I vacked out the bottom a little bit, some detritus settles on the bottom. This has pretty dense sand in the bottom, so I don't really have to gravel vac. The stuff sort of lays on the surface, but I did collect up some of that. I removed all of the water sprite that was floating in there, except for one little tiny piece that we can see back in the corner there. That will start growing back in. I've got this last little piece of, can't even remember the name of that stuff anymore. I got it from the reservoir over the summer, but that's still in the tank. It's just kind of floating around, and right now it's stuck on the Anubias and the Java fern right there. But that'll do whatever. It'll probably get knocked loose and swirl around. It was floating at the surface before, so it'll probably end up there again in the near future. As far as the smell, no big mystery there. I found the body of my Hillstream loach. I've been meaning to shoot a video about that fish for some time now because I've been expecting it to die. It's a fairly old fish. It's not suited for this kind of habitat at all. I bought a lot of them early on when I was, new to the hobby, and they all died. They just kept dying one after another. And I eventually, the last time I bought them, I bought 6 or 8 of them at the same time, and they all died off except for that one. And at that point, I said, you know what? These fish obviously aren't meant to be in this tank, and so I stopped trying. But that one fish just hung on, and it hung on for years. And I don't know, maybe a month ago I started noticing it was starting to look pale. It was starting to get like white blotches on it, and it just looked like it was fading away. Probably didn't die of true old age, but because it's in inhospitable conditions, then it aged much more rapidly than it should have. So it's still ultimately probably a result of not being in the proper water, the proper temperature, proper oxygen levels. All that just takes a toll on the fish's health over time. And even though I had it for maybe 7 years, it probably would have lived a lot longer than that if it was in a more suitable habitat. But I still got 7 years out of it. And anyway, that's what passed away. And that's where that smell was coming from. There's absolutely no doubt about it. When I pulled the fish out, I actually sniffed the dead fish. It was gross, but it was definitely the smell I had been smelling in the tank. And so even though it was an odd sort of smell, that's what I was smelling. So no mystery about what that smell was. It really was a dead fish in the tank. As far as the filter goes and the reduced flow from the filter, I did pull that apart. I shot a quick video about how to access the impeller. It was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be, so I didn't really do a whole lot with that video other than just shoot its own sort of standalone video. I'll put a card here if you didn't see that one yet. It's just a minute long, very, very easy to access the impeller on the Sun canister filter. So you can see I got a fairly significant amount of water flow back, but that was not because the filter was dirty. In fact, I didn't even do anything in the filter except change the actual filter pad. I didn't even rinse out any of the biomedia or anything. It was fairly clean, and I didn't really need to be in there doing anything to it at all, honestly. But since I was in there, I went ahead and changed the filter pads out anyway. Where I did get a lot of restriction was on the intake down at the bottom. We can't really see it, but that was just packed with bits of leaves and all kinds of crap and crud and so on and so forth. And that's where I was getting my reduced flow. I cleaned that off, and that's where we got all of this. When I went in and looked at my impeller, the impeller was fully open and free-flowing. Everything was fine. Now, I did have one viewer suggest that I should have pulled out the magnet and the whole entire unit, because sometimes the magnet will get crud and biofilm and stuff will grow around the magnet itself, and that reduces how fast it spins, and any reduction in how fast it spins is going to reduce your flow rate. So even though I got it all cleared off and it really was just a clogged intake, I still don't have full flow like I used to when this thing was new. So when I get in there again, the next time I do a filter change on this tank, because I now know how easy it is to simply pop that thing off and access the impeller, I will go ahead and do that. I'll get in there and make sure I got that impeller fully cleaned out, and that should give me a little bit more flow. But as it is, we've got enough flow now that I'm not concerned about it. I mean, you can see we've got a little bit of activity on the surface there. That is a huge improvement over what we were getting before we did this water change. And the last thing I will say is, if any of you have noticed the white on the tip of the tail of that long-finned black skirt tetra right there, I've been looking at that for a while now because I've been wondering what that is too. It's been getting whiter and whiter as time goes on, but I swear when I look at it, it is just like the pixelation, or not the pixelation, the, what's the word I'm looking for? Can't think of the word I'm looking for. The coloring of the fish. And it just looks white. I don't think that's anything wrong with it. I don't think it's anything on the fin. It's just that sort of pearly white sheen that some fish get in their fins. So I just think that's a distinct characteristic of that one particular fish. But I have noticed it. I am keeping my eye on it, and I will be watching it more closely. I'm so close to thinking of that word I'm looking for. If anybody knows what word I'm looking for, put it in the comment section down below. Although by the time you get to that, I will have probably already thought about it. But pixels is the only word that's coming to my mind, and pixels is not the word I'm looking for. Pigmentation, there we go. That's the word I was looking for. Pigments, not pixels, pigments. So I think that is just the pigmentation on the fish's fin. I don't think that that's anything to worry about. So there we go. I can sleep well tonight now that I've found that word I was groping around for. Pigmentation. Alright everybody, thanks for watching. That's the latest on my 55-gallon Gourami tank. Hope you enjoyed that one. Make sure you're subscribed, that way you won't miss anything I got coming up. You never know what it's going to be with me. See you real soon in the next one.